So as Stacy had mentioned, what today's topic is going to be time management and task management. Um, and our agenda today are just we're going to start off just like we've been doing from week to week, talking about follow-up reflections from the previous week. We're going to talk about time management and task management. And we'll also, at the end, have discussions and questions and kind of takeaway messages from individuals. So, and please, chime in throughout the presentation as you have done in the past. It's always good to have that participant feedback and just engagement. So some follow-ups as we've started previous sessions prior. Any questions that are lingering? As Stacy has summarized some of the questions to think of from week to week. She's been really doing a nice job capturing those for you to think about. You know, successes, changes, steps, actionable steps that you've taken based on some of the conversations that we've had so far. Some challenges, what have you learned? Anybody? Alicia,
Hello, I'm on the phone. Can I ask a question?
give me 1 second. The person's on the phone. Alicia, can you just hold on 1 second?
Yes, of course.
Okay, the speaker on the phone.
Oh, yes, I'm Courtney. Thank you so much.
Courtney.
I feel really badly that I can't raise the hand. I'm not on I tried to get on the Zoom, but I don't know why I can't get on. But thank you for all this. And last time when I was asking the question, you were answering and the phone call dropped. So you answered and you indicated yes, something to the effect of the central nervous system, the sympathetic, and how we could get to the parasympathetic. I wasn't sure if you were going to go into that at a later point in time, but that would be awesome or amazing. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and then I can mute myself because I realize it's not specific, but I think you know what I'm getting at, yes?
Refresh my memory. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So you were talking to all of us, and you had mentioned the sympathetic nervous system, and that all of us, we want to get away from that, right? Which means, get out of the fight or flight or constantly dangerous or things are out of whack. They're not in control and under control, and we want to not be in that situation. So we want to have the parasympathetic nervous system in our bodies in control, where we are cool, calm, collected, no matter what's going on. And so what happened was, after I asked the question about when you referenced the sympathetic nervous system, would I be correct in saying that we want to be in the parasympathetic? Do we want our central nervous system to be in the parasympathetic state of mind so that we can process our days and all of our work, etc., in better form? And you indicated yes, but then the phone call had dropped. So I just called back in, and so I didn't hear what your answer was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for putting more context in. Absolutely. So when we are dysregulated, what's activated is our sympathetic nervous system. But then what we want is our bodies are naturally trying to find a homeostasis. It's always trying to find that equal balance. So as one system goes online, there's another system that's going to bring it back down to more a balanced state. And so when we are in a more balanced state, we can be able to be rational. We can be able to plan. We are able to do the things that sometimes can stop us because we might be dysregulated at times. And so, when we're overwhelmed and stressed, and we are releasing all this cortisol and stress hormones, it does it does affect our physical health, and because our system is trying to find that homeostasis, but it's going to be activated when we're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, which then leads to procrastination and avoidance. So absolutely, our bodies are already doing this and regulating. And so by helping do some of the techniques that we've talked about, like self-care and challenging those automatic thoughts, could then introduce the ability for the parasympathetic system to go online, which is why I think maybe when we were talking about it was when I remember sharing that the grounding work and those strategies. And so, yeah, our bodies are naturally always trying to balance itself out. But thank you for that comment.
No, thank you so much. I'm going to go back on mute.
Thank you. Alicia.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So one of the things that I implement, sorry, my dog really wants to be on my lap. She's been off of it all day, so she really wants to be there. And say hi. But one of the things I implemented is I got back on this journal that I used to use that made me very productive. Like one of my highest billing months is when I was using this journal. It's like the productivity planner from Intelligent Change. And it actually has, the first few pages actually has thoughts of like how to remain focused and stuff like that. And so like it requires me to kind of plan out my week, plan out my day, and like hour by hour, which is great. So I can keep on track. And also it helps me track my billing. So I've been billing because of this physical notebook. I've been doing my billing throughout the day rather than a couple of days later
Yeah.
or a week later. So that we talked about using resources to help keep us on track and keep us on time with tasks and assignments and planners and stuff like that. That's definitely one thing that's helped. And I've been keeping my phone away, so I'm trying not to use apps to help track these because then I get distracted. I'm like, oh, how much is this on Amazon? Then I'm on Amazon for like an hour. So I've been keeping my phone in a drawer. So that's definitely helped with the productivity and keep staying focused.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Yeah, just being becoming aware of where your distractions are. And we're going to definitely talk more of that next week with distractions. But yeah, knowing what's working for you, what's not working for you is all really part of this journey of ADHD and executive functioning. So it's great. And Alicia, can you tell me, you said that it was helpful for you. How did it make you how did it make you feel? Did you feel, more relaxed? Did you feel more at ease because of the planning? Because it does sound like you were able to kind of think about well in advance what you were going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't miss anything and like meetings wise. And so that was less stressful. But also I think planning out my day throughout in the morning or the day before, I knew exactly when I sat down, I already started to think about the project I was going to work on. Like, when I sat down, it helped regulate. And then I knew, okay, I'm getting close to this being done. I know I don't have to sit and think about what's next. I know what's next already. So that saves a lot of time and stress. And then another thing that I did, which we didn't discuss last week, but I think we discussed a couple of weeks before, is I started to, when a task got difficult and I started getting anxious, I would I would be like, okay, I'm just taking 5 minutes to meditate. And so I would meditate and then get back into it. And then another thing was a distraction list. So when I am in the flow and the distracting thought came that I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget that, I write that down so I don't have to think about it anymore or try to remember it. So those are a couple things that really helped me this week, and it made me feel good because I felt productive and a valuable member of the team, which is always good.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you for that insight and just some of the things that we talked about last week, but also incorporating some of the other techniques that we talked about in the previous weeks, right? The first couple of weeks, and being able to recognize that you're feeling more anxious, and that anxiety is coming from when things are becoming a little bit more challenging for you, but also taking a step back and saying, you know what, I'm feeling anxious, recognizing it, and then doing something with meditation notification to distract you for 5 minutes. And it sounds like you had a productive week where you were able to plan and kind of almost visualize how you were going to approach the task before you even started the task. But that took that you had to plan, before the day before, and then the same day. Right. So those are really good feedback and techniques. And I'm glad that you feel good and positive, because when you feel good and positive and things are successful, you're more likely to actually accomplish the task, and you're not going to avoid it, and you're not going to procrastinate. So good insight. Cole.
Hi, my name is Mark, actually. Cole
Oh,
Valkenburg is our firm, but hi, thank you very much for the, sorry
go
to
ahead.
confuse everybody.
Not a problem. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the discussion. It's been great. But since the last session, I've been thinking about two issues that a lot of us deal with that seem to conflict with each other as far as resolving it. And on the one hand, for example, I have a lot of clutter, trying to reduce the clutter and understand that how that reduces stress level and helps me work better. But I'm also, like a lot of people, very much an out of sight, out of mind person. So it's hard to figure out, the kind of the conflict of needing to create space and put things away, but then being nervous and stressful about the fact if I put something away, it sometimes doesn't exist for me. So, that's something I wouldn't mind, some feedback on and some suggestions about, the best way to deal with that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, not a problem, Mark. Thank you. I think the way that you could use the clutter, I mean, of course, I think the best thing for you to think about, and I think we're going to talk about it too with the task management and time management, is what materials do you need to accomplish that task? Right. And maybe you can make a list of all the materials that you have in your inventory, whatever that may be. And you can make a list and just say, okay, well, when you're switching from one task to another, you can refer to that list of all the things that you might be needing, right? So um, give me 1 second. Hold on real quick. I do apologize.
While Michael's stepped away from the program, I encourage you to copy the link for the survey and take that survey so we can better shape the program moving forward.
I hope it wasn't my question that scared him away.
I don't think it was. There he is.
I
Welcome
apologize.
back.
Something had.
Run
I
off
apologize.
break.
I apologize. So what I was saying was you.
Run off break.
Oh. You could make a list of the materials that you typically need for all tasks, right? You just make a master list of all those materials. But then when you switch from one task to another, then you're really picking up what is the materials that you particularly need for that particular task, and only those materials you would take out. Things that you could think about also is like put post-its of materials to kind of give yourself a reminder. Oh, well, these are materials that I do have if I need to get them out, but you may not need the materials in the space because clutter, as I mentioned last week, our brains don't do well with clutter. Right. Even visual clutter, things like that. And we're going to talk about could actually be more detrimental for you to be, it will just be more challenging for you to complete the task. So I think those are things that you can say, look, I don't need it, but also addressing kind of out of sight, out of mind. I don't think you really need the actual materials themselves with you, but more so maybe a list of the things that you can refer back to if those are materials that you'll need to be successful in the task. I hope that I was able to answer that question.
No, thank you very much. It means a hell of a lot of Post-it notes, but I think it's better than what I've got now. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think I don't know where I read read this, either maybe I was reading an article or coming across something, but it was interesting that somebody that has ADHD was said that they had like post-its literally everywhere in their house, like in the refrigerator, on the refrigerator, everywhere, just so that they would be reminded of the things that they needed to accomplish. And so sometimes, you might have to go to that extreme, or maybe that's not really an extreme, but maybe that's what you need in order for you to be successful, right? There's times where I do the same thing. Sometimes I'm like, okay, the following day, I'm going to need something before I leave, and I might put a post-it on the door to remind me, or I actually put things in my way so I can trip over it, so that I don't forget it. So there's definitely some strategies that you can do, still being able to organize and keep the clutter at bay, but also not forgetting the materials that you need. But you're also going to be planning what materials you need prior to you doing your task anyways. And we're going to talk about that more in a bit too. Any other comments or questions? All right, so let's move on. So when you think of time and task management, what comes to mind? What are you thinking? What are you thinking of? Come on, somebody, please.
We have to prioritize.
You have to prioritize, I heard.
Yes, we have to do that.
Okay, so so prioritizing would be included in here. Crystal. All right, not sure if Crystal, I see Crystal's hand. How about if we'll come back to Crystal. V. Riker?
Yeah, when I think of time management, I think of how to get out of hyper focus to get on to the next task I need to do. Because when I get so deep in what I'm doing, those transitions are the problem for me. And so time management is preparing to end, not so much preparing to start. It's really preparing to end so I can move on to the next thing I need to do.
Okay, so thinking more, not necessarily the beginning, but at the end. Okay, good. Good feedback. Crystal, I know that you had your hand up just before. Wasn't sure if you wanted to add. And if there was anybody else that wanted to just add to that. Ardith? I see your hand up. You're on mute. Ardith, I'm not. I just you're still on mute. Um, Stacy, is there a way of unmuting?
I can't do that. The person has to do that for themselves, but I do have
Okay.
Crystal's question because she
Okay.
said her microphone's not working. So
Okay,
she,
technology,
yeah.
some challenges here
Mhm.
today. Go ahead.
So she said her time issues are related to that. She can't estimate how long something will ever take.
Okay. And we could definitely talk about that, and how you can introduce that or practice that. Yeah. Okay. So if Ardith, you could unmute yourself at a later time.
I just
Okay.
hit unmute, but I don't know. Am I speaking?
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, okay. Um, as opposed to what the speaker before said, I think that the hardest thing for HD people is to concentrate on something well enough to get to cover something without thinking of something else. I mean, it seems like that's what takes all the time, is keeping yourself focused on one thing, because you want to think about everything else besides what you're supposed to think about.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that again we're going to talk about in our in our presentation is writing things down, right? The more you hold on into your brain, I mean our brains are wonderful machines where we can store a lot of information, but we can get to the limits of our capacity. And so writing things down will allow for you to be able to concentrate on the task that you're completing. Because if all of a sudden you're completing a task and then you're thinking about, oh my goodness, I have 10 other tasks, well, you're not really focusing on the task at hand because you're thinking about the other 10 tasks that you have to also complete as well. So the more you write down, then you can always come back to it. And the other thing is that it serves as a kind of a safety net of where you're not, you won't tend to forget that something has to be completed because you've now written it down. And so doing that more often could start decreasing the demand that's necessary for the concentration and the focus, because what you're really referring to is sustained attention. And we'll talk about some ways that you can address that through other techniques like the Pomodoro technique, and we'll talk about the body doubling as well. So very good comments. All right, so Ardith, I'm just going to mute you again. Oh,
I would just add one thing to what you said.
sure.
And it's the brain doesn't want to think about other tasks. It wants to think about something it likes, or it just wants to think about something besides what you're doing. And it takes a long time to keep yourself focused on that particular thing. So that's why I thought that things take more time
Yeah,
than they
and it
need
could.
to.
And it could, especially, if you're not interested in the task, it's just you're more likely to be distracted. But I think if you plan ahead of time and know, oh, goodness, I'm gonna do an estate case, and maybe you're just not good at it, maybe you're not a fan of it, whatever it is, as long as you take notice of, hey, this is something that I notice about myself when I'm doing this task, I'm more distracted, then you're better prepared to then put things into place to keep you more focused. And some of the strategies that we're going to talk about could possibly address some of the things that could affect sustained attention. And some of the things that we've talked about in the past is also thinking about rewards. And so when you do get to accomplish something that was much more challenging for you, rewarding yourself, then you feel good. And so the next time that you're assigned that particular task, you're more likely to just do it, or with less hesitation. But good comments. I'm just going to mute you, Ardith, okay? So, as in previous lectures and workshops, we always kind of include, what's the importance of time management and task management for attorneys? And of course, here's a list, and we're not going to go through all of them, but is there anyone that could identify some commonalities in from one week to another, of why these topics are important for attorneys, or anything that stands out to you on this particular list? Adam.
Oh, just have to unmute. One thing I'd say is avoiding overwhelm is a big thing for me, because I can try to manage my time, and sometimes I let myself get distracted. And I like the idea of writing notes for the things that come to you while you're focusing on one thing, so you don't forget to come back to them later. But in my particular setting, and it might be the case for others, that my time is not always my own. I might have my own views as to what I want to get done in a day, and then the schedule gets turned around on me. So that point number 4, avoiding overwhelm. is a key for me to be able to stay focused or get back on track when I do get interrupted.
How do you know when you're becoming overwhelmed?
Um, I think it's when I have that fight or flight response. It's not like I don't want to deal with this, or it's like I feel like kind of paralysis of analysis, like where do I go from this? Um, or things start to slip and I have to tell somebody on my team, well, sorry, I just need more time to do this. And then I feel bad about needing more time than I said I'd need. So it's like, it's strong discomfort is what I feel inside and tension when I feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you notice more like the cognitive piece on, feeling, I mean, maybe being stuck. But I think what I'm also hearing from you is, a little bit of the mindset, right? I had to ask somebody at times, I needed to ask somebody that I needed a little bit more time. And so that then you feel guilty, right? That those discussions that we've had in the past of shame and guilt and feeling sorry. And and what you really need to understand is if you need more time to complete a task and it's out of your control because as you described, your what you had planned out for the day all of a sudden gets shifted upside down, then one, you have to be being able to be flexible, right? And by flexibility also means to be kind to yourself and say, look, you didn't have control over that change, right? Especially if it's being dictated to you that you need to make the change. So some of it is about the mindset, and how you might be viewing, you know should you feel sorry, that you ask somebody for more time, right? And maybe navigating that perspective, right? And so of course it's not going to change the fact that your time is not yours. But I think the idea would be is here's becoming more aware of when it's coming up, and not feeling bad when you have to ask for more time, because that's what's needed. And so when you're able to work through that, then anxiety will go down, and you won't feel as overwhelmed, right? So just being aware of it, and the mindset, and if you need time, you need time, and take it. So Damien.
Yes, thanks. One thing that jumps out to me is just the extent to which all of these are so interrelated. And, for me, I think I read in a book on ADHD recently that for a lot of people with ADHD, time, we talked about time blindness, and a lot of things are either now or never, basically, right? So, when someone says, give me something in 2 weeks, it might as well be 2 months or 2 years. So I often find myself kind of waiting until like the day before something's due or the day something's due to really get to it, because I think I've underestimated how long it's going to take me. And then I start looking at it, and then, I have questions, and I'll get a rush assignment all kind of at the same time. So, the extent to which you're able to kind of get into something right away, right? I've had more than one superior mentor tell me, when you get an assignment, you just do it, regardless of when it's, someone says it's due. If it's due in a week, you should just, if you have capacity and you have the time to just tackle it right away. So I think I mentioned in the very first meeting my desire to have a better work-life balance through better time management and prioritization. So that one really jumps out at me. I think 8, 9, and 10 really jump out of me just as quality of life. And another thing that a therapist told me is, right, like I made the choice to go to law school and become a lawyer. So I'm here, this is my choice, and I got to make the most of it. So the extent to which 1 through 7 can really give you a better quality of life in 8 through 10, I think really jumped out at me too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Damien. Yeah, and always about the work life balance, or when tasks are assigned. Okay, well, it's due in 2 weeks. So how if it's due in 2 weeks, many times it's because it's going to take you a little bit of time to complete it, right? Because if not, then they would have said, "Hey, it's due tomorrow." If sometimes if you think about, why people give you the time that they're giving you, right? And so if you are able to plan ahead of time and say, okay, so this is the assignment that I need to do, and when you're doing it, to put in when it's due, but then also being able to break up that task into smaller pieces, and then being able to schedule the time that you need to do it. And that requires you to be aware of that time blindness that we've been talking about from week to week, and individuals have been talking about and bringing up, is being able to know when you're going to start a task and how long is it going to take where you're going to end the task, and being able to plan ahead of time. Hey, how long do you think this task is going to be? And then be able to time yourself during completing the task, and then later on reviewing, okay, did I overestimate, did I underestimate? Why did you do one versus the other? Okay. But I think that those are definitely things that can just absolutely improve. If you're able to manage these things, the quality of life improves. But I think you have to be also intentional and be able to look at you know, where you can save time, where, we talked about automatizing things, and sourcing out tasks that you might not necessarily need to complete yourself. And so by doing those, being aware of the things that really that you need to actually complete, and then times where you can maybe farm out those tasks, but being able to recognize that and when you need to do that, will start helping you gain some time back, right? Or the fact that, we talked about organization last week. If you're spending a long time trying to locate one thing because, everything is, your materials and your files are all in disarray, well, that's why your day's that much longer. Right, just it's kind of like a natural and logical consequence. If you're able to organize, keep things with no distractions, then you're able to own that time back. But also just making sure that you're planning in advance how long a task is going to take. Because I'm sure that there may be similar tasks or similar cases that may come up, where you can then say, well, the last time I did this task, it took me 3 days to complete. So it would not make sense for you to say, if you got the same similar task, to say, well, it's going to be completed in 1 day. Right, you're using that prior experience, prior knowledge to then guide you for new things that are coming up. V. Riker, I saw that your hand was up, but go ahead.
Yeah, so this concept of overestimating time never happens to me. And that is part of what I mean by this hyper focus of, if I have an hour to do something and I can finish in 20 minutes, it's going to take me the whole hour to do it, because I'll then say, oh, I've got 40 minutes left. I must have done something wrong, or let's see what else I can do. Let's see and then suddenly the hour is done and I'm in the middle of revamping, redoing whatever. And so I wind up feeling like I have poorly managed my time, when in fact I finished it the first time after 20 minutes.
And so I think, again, that goes to the mindset, and your ability to say and be confident. Like, if you've already accomplished a task, then you accomplish the task, and then what you do is you move on to the next task. And that's why I think having to-do lists will is helpful, because as you finish one thing, you cross it off, go to the next thing, and then you can keep on going through your list. And even when you were saying, well, sometimes I feel as though there must be something I did wrong, because I planned an hour, but it took me 20 minutes, and now I have all this time. Sometimes it's about the mindset, and always making sure that if you're making a statement, that you're evaluating the evidence, and kind of going back to using the defense and prosecution, that strategy that we talked about a couple weeks ago, is what evidence are you using? Are there alternatives to how you're viewing the task or your accomplishment of the task? So mindset is really important because it definitely leads us to the stress, anxiety, and feeling overwhelmed. And when you're doing those things, then you procrastinate. And so then that leads you to trying to scramble, which then affects your work-life balance, right? So right here, there's just a snowball effect that happens with some of these, the way in which we're viewing these tasks and your own abilities. So I would always check back on if, your mindset. And seeing are you using evidence, the quality of the evidence could help challenge some of that perspective. And we'll talk about a little bit more on the overestimation in a bit. So just we mentioned last week calendar management. We're not going to go through it a little through that, but what I thought was most interesting about the calendar management that could help with time management and task management is really just using some type of organizational tool. Whatever that may be, more of a paper pencil or a digital calendar, color coding certain events where you can put like everything in red is all urgent. Blue could be important meetings or upcoming meetings. So kind of organizing, it kind of goes back to the organization last week as well. Setting multiple reminders. I can admit for myself, when there's something that's going on, I put many times I'll put a week reminder, a day before reminder, an hour reminder before the task, and then 15 minutes. And so those are things that I usually will do for myself that will keep me uh, on track of what tasks I have or appointments that are coming up. So putting multiple reminders will be important. If you're the type of person that always neglects, all reminders that come to your phone, find something else that might not be your phone. Get more another external device where you're less likely to kind of snooze or disregard. How many people tend to find that they do that? Might end up putting reminders and then they kind of just disregard them. I see Ardith, your hand is raised. Alicia, I'm not sure if you're raising your hand, but I guess that's what it was. So a couple of people do that. And so the idea is setting multiple reminders can be helpful, but if it's not being used appropriately, then either you want to start using it with intention, as we've talked about in previous weeks, but also then maybe finding another device that can give you those reminders where you're less likely to disregard them. And then time blocking. Really scheduling time intentionally of when you're going to do things, when you're going to get up in the morning, taking a shower, eating your meals, when you're going to have your meals, that the non-negotiable time that we talked about, where you have free time or downtime for you to have your time. Times in which you put in purposefully when you have to travel for getting from one place to another. How many people plan out and put in travel time in their calendar in between meetings, tasks, seeing clients?
I
Okay,
always do.
Neva. Thank you, Neva. I'm not sure if you who spoke, but Neva.
Sorry, yes, I'm just raising my hand that yes, I put travel time in because
Okay.
otherwise I start to get ready when I'm supposed to leave.
Okay.
If I leave it in my head, then I just do everything else in the world. And when I'm supposed to be walking out the door, that's when I start to get ready. It's awful.
And
Um,
does it help you out putting the scheduling like when you should be traveling and getting ready or preparing that you should
it
be preparing?
helps. I'm at this meeting because obviously I don't have it all solved.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I know you can laugh. It's all right. We are all laughing at that, snorting milk out of our noses. Um,
But I
but
think
it does
that's a,
help.
that, and that I think just being aware of it helps you out to saying, look, it helps me out, but also just recognizing that you don't have all the answers, and maybe some of this stuff is things could be a repeat or a refresher for many individuals, maybe things that you've uh, come across some of these strategies and suggestions in the past, but maybe just kind of revisiting this, right? We're going to get to other sides, which always I've always emphasized, kind of revisiting, reflecting, adjusting, updating. I think this is all important. So, we could all learn something new or practice a little bit more. But thank you, Neva.
And I would just say as a PS that over the weekend I was going somewhere on public transportation. The train stayed in one station too long, so I was pushed trying to make a New Jersey Transit train, as were two other people that got off. So we're all kind of running down the hallway. And, my sneaker caught on something and I tripped and fell down. So I missed. But then I've been hurting since Saturday. And what I've been saying to myself since then is that number one, I should be adding more than whatever amount of time Google tells me,
Mhm.
just first of all. And then secondly, to remember daily adjustments. Like if it's raining, we all should know, everybody in this call is old enough to know it's going to take more time. There's going to be delays. There's going to be, you've got to add the rain pad or the snow pad. And for me this week is that I have to move a little more intentionally, a little slower. So I need an extra pad of time this week. Um, you know,
Yeah, no,
lesson learning.
no, and that I think you learn that absolutely you can't rely just on what Google's saying, right? But then the other thing is the intentional factoring of these other barriers or obstacles that can get in your way. And I'm sorry that you fell and you hurt yourself. And there's at least you get that as a feedback, even if you're hurt. Use this as feedback as to what would you do differently next time, and so that where you don't harm yourself, because that's not what we want you to do, and you shouldn't harm yourself because you're trying to rush and get from one point to another. And I know that that's sometimes what you have to do, but at the same time, don't do it to the point where it's a detriment to your safety or your health at all, because at the end of the day, we're all replaceable, and something worse could have happened because of the rushing. And so being more intentional, taking that experience and saying, look, I need to do things differently moving forward, and you tweak that as with every day. I think
And
that's important.
the insurance companies know this. That's why drivers under 25 get higher premiums. It's why drivers in the first 3 years of their license get higher premiums. And as much as I want transparency and accommodation for our neurodivergent state, I'm afraid of a universal medical system where the insurance companies can say, oh, yes, you have ADHD. So automatically I'm going to increase your premiums 20% because you as a group have a higher propensity for accidents, which is not I don't know the exact number, but it's not an untrue fact, whether it's because we're late or we lose focus as we're driving, or what. I bet that there would be a lot of hands, I'm not asking to see them, of how many times are we driving and we get somewhere or we're just at a particular exit and we're like, oh wow, 3 other exits passed. Like how did I get here? I'm still traveling 55. Like, it's scary.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the grounding work could come in, and just being more intentional about what's going on around you could maybe alleviate some of that, the distractibility. But yeah, great points, Neva. Great points. Um, so task lists and to-do apps, could be really helpful. How do you break down tasks? How do you decide what is important versus what's urgent? Anybody? How do you break down tasks?
So since I can't raise my hands, this is Courtney. Should I just tell you because I'm on the
Yeah,
phone?
Courtney, go ahead.
I just heard, I question, okay, who can die if I don't do this, or who will lose their freedom and their liberty, literally, ability to walk and be near their family, etc., be in jail or lose their retirement, stuff like that. I'm gonna go back on mute.
Okay, so kind of using the immediate result or the consequence, the severity of the consequence. If this is kind of a life and or death situation. Okay. Anybody else
Right.
want to share?
I meant because as lawyers we do that stuff. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So things that you can use is a prioritization matrix. And the idea is here is, if it's urgent and important, you do immediately. If it's important but not urgent, you schedule. If it's urgent but not important, maybe you delegate. And if it's neither urgent nor important, you consider not doing it or postponing it. Right. Thinking about prioritizing, excuse me, think about triage, right? When you think of an emergency room, a doctor has to triage, right? And what does that mean to triage? You have competing things. You have 5 patients that come in, and each one has a different need. What does the emergency doctor do? Right? They have to be able to plan right away or decide within seconds who needs what and when and how fast. Right? You get to know that, and it's because you think of what's urgent and important, and then you start prioritizing. So using, kind of taking a step back and triaging, if you have 5 things that you need to do, right, and nobody's telling you, well, what needs to get done first, use some type of matrix, some type of decision making to say, okay, is this urgent, is this important, and how can you categorize them. This is a way that you can, a step-by-step way of doing a task management. But what stands out to you when you're thinking about managing tasks on this list? So, okay, V. Riker?
I think the delegating and outsourcing, because I so often am doing things, I know what I need to get done, and I get to a point where it's, oh, this needs to be done. And instead of saying, do I need to do it or can I give that to somebody else to do? I automatically assume I have to do it. And then that messes up the rest of the project, the rest of the schedule, and I'm pushing, pushing, pushing because I didn't delegate something that I could have delegated. Of course, if it's 8 o'clock at night, because I've been hyper focused on what I'm doing, and I suddenly realize it, then I do have to do it. And I'm there till 10 o'clock because I didn't delegate it at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important, being able to recognize that in advance, where then it doesn't put you in a position where then now you have to own that. So being able to just, if you plan ahead and prioritize, you're more likely to be able to identify, oh, let me delegate, let me outsource these things. And at least when you're required to do that same task again, you then now hopefully you will remember this when it comes up again, where you can then say, well, the last time I did that, I needed to delegate and I kicked myself in the behind because I didn't delegate, I didn't outsource, which then made me work extra, which then caused me to not be able to spend time with my family or have that work-life balance, because again, we're all replaceable. So, you learn from these previous experiences and you try to use them for future tasks or similar tasks. Things that I highlighted here was breaking larger tasks into smaller tasks, thinking of a task analysis, thinking of how many steps is it to take to brush your teeth, It may, some people might say, oh, it takes about 5. I would probably say it may take about 11, 12 when you actually break it down. So doing the same thing, and with breaking the larger tasks down into smaller tasks, being able to say, okay, when I complete this particular task, how long is it going to take? And then be monitoring that. Track it and then go back and say, was I correct? Did I overestimate? Did I underestimate? Setting realistic deadlines, right? That's important. You're not going to be able to complete everything. And sometimes there are going to be tasks that you're going to have to carry over, and that's okay. The idea is that you're prioritizing what needs your attention that particular day, and then being able to readjust, which goes to the regularly review and update. Mark.
Actually, this is Chris.
Okay, Chris now. Okay.
I just want to thank you for everything. It's been very helpful. This was a daughter diagnosis, and this is very enlightening. But one of the things that I think fits right in here is I do batching. If I have similar work, I try to do it all at the same time because it minimizes it, because I'm consistent with what I'm working with and I'm familiar and I don't have to switch up as much. I just thought that might help.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, batching things together, knowing if you're already in the mindset of doing something, clustering the things, which I think that's great, because with every task, with every client, probably, I'm sure you have to readjust, and those transitions, as I forgot somebody that had said earlier, could be really challenging. So if you know that you can kind of batch things together, I think that could help with the task management and the time management. I always like to put in some example or some exercises that you can use to help learn more or practice prioritizing. And so I gave you an example here is you ask a friend, what are the tasks that they need to complete, and then you try to categorize them in specific buckets, like must do, should do, and would be nice to do. And then you go back to to your friend and say, okay, based on the list of things that you had told me that you need to prioritize, this is what I kind of came up with. Do you agree with it? Why do you agree with it? If you don't agree with it, why don't you agree with it? Because then you can get some feedback, and that's kind of outside of yourself. But practicing this could be helpful. To-do list, as I mentioned before, if it's not written down, it could bog your brain, right? We only have we all have limited capacities of how much information, strings of information we can hold at any given time. Some people have better capacity, or a higher capacity, not better, but more capacity than others. And so, just being able to recognize that and writing it down. It also alleviates being overwhelmed and anxious. I tell people all the time, I tell clients, journal, write things down, because then what you can do is you can come back to it. You don't have to worry, or you don't have to think about everything. So open up some of that real estate in your brain. Keep your list tidy. So as I mentioned before, like your space should be organized, because our brains don't do well with clutter. Same thing with visualizing your to-do list. If it's all over the place and there's scribbles here and there, it could become overwhelming. And I mentioned this before, give yourself the satisfaction of crossing it out. Crossing things off your list could be rewarding. And that itself could be motivating for you to be saying, oh, I'm productive. Look, I have this stuff and I'm crossing it out, right? It allows for you to feel more successful. Adding things to the end of your list. A new task comes up, adding it to the end of your list, and reviewing and rewriting your to-do list daily. Of course, always that self-reflection. We're going to go to time management. This is just step by step kind of ways that you can use some time management. We talked about some of this, using a calendar, blocking out time intentionally, avoiding multitasking. There's people say that they're good at multitasking. The research actually says that is not true. We're not good at multitasking. So trying to eliminate the multitasking and focusing on one thing at a time, where then you feel much more productive, right? Because if you're focusing on multiple tasks and you don't complete anything, the take-home message you might have is, I didn't get anything done. And if I have that mindset, I didn't get anything done. And look, I've worked 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours, whatever it may be. And you're like doing, and you're not getting end result, more likely you're not going to feel good, and then you're going to procrastinate, and so it just increases anxiety and being overwhelmed. Right. So there's always these connections. What I did want to highlight on this slide was breaking tasks into Pomodoros. And so Pomodoros are increments, smaller increments of a time where you can focus on the task for, let's say, 25 minutes, and then you give yourself 5 minutes of a break. You do whatever it is that you want to, kind of do grounding work, deep breathing, go on, scroll on your phone, whatever it may be. But you want to do multiple Pomodoros where you do work 25 minutes, you give yourself 5-minute break. You go back to 25 minutes of work, you give yourself 5-minute breaks. You can start with smaller Pomodoro sections, but you really are to then increase the ability to increase that time. Okay. And again, regularly reflect and adjust. Oh, goodness. Goodness, where was I? Okay, to-do list, we were here, time management. There was some, I wanted to just go over some notes. Stick to a predictable schedule. That's the other thing I wanted to note on here. Sticking to a predictable schedule, build reasonable downtime. You do need downtime from your daily routine into your daily routines, and also making a public commitment to follow your schedule. When you put things out there into the universe, you're more likely to do it. So if I say I'm going to do X, Y, and Z because I had that thought, because what we're saying is a thought that we had, the more intention we have in actually accomplishing the task or the follow through. Okay. Usually I would have talked about what is body doubling. We're going to just jump right into it. The idea here is that you have somebody that holds you accountable. You're working while the other person's working as well. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the next slide. How the body doubling could be effective or useful for attorneys, or the reasons why body doubling could be helpful. And that is reducing distractions, reducing anxiety, helps with time management, helps with brainstorming and problem solving. Right. The idea here is with using body doubling effectively is you have to find the right person. Set clear expectations, establish boundaries, and using technology when possible. So a way that I use this is, so I meet with clients for executive functioning coaching, and I tell them, okay, so you said that you were going to work on something, on a task between sessions, and the person might not have been doing that or didn't accomplish that. And so what I'll say is, okay, well then, since you didn't do it when you said that you were going to do it, well, you're going to do it right now. So that person is working on their task and I'm doing my own thing. Right. And so when they're done, I hold them accountable. They can't avoid or procrastinate on the task. And so but I'm also doing some work as well. So you can do that with coworkers, or anybody, like if even a friend, a family relative, they might have other tasks they need to do, but you might meet up with them at a particular time to work on a particular task. And so there might not be conversations, it's not a social event. This is more of, I'm gonna reset this time intentionally aside for us to work on these tasks. Right. And that's how body doubling works. Right? If it's somebody that you're going to chit chat with, they're going to be distracting to you, that's not a good person to use for body doubling. Right? Anybody use body doubling? Neva.
Yeah, sorry, again, I was just trying to say, yes, I do.
Okay.
And for people that aren't familiar, there's focusmate.com, which used to be free. I'm not sure if it still is. And there's people around the world that are doing this. As attorneys, we just need to be sure to not let our camera be showing the work we're doing for attorney-client privilege. So, have it pictured on your face, but not your papers. And then
Absolutely.
I'm in a couple of attorney groups where we have body doubling sessions and stuff. So I find it really, really effective.
Thank you, Neva. Thank you for sharing your experience and putting those factors of making sure that you're not putting your camera in a way that it's disclosing confidential client information. So a great great way or a great topic to bring up or point. Damien.
I was gonna say I find that the professional rules pose a challenge to me sometimes. I work from home now, which I didn't used to do predominantly, so I'm alone a lot, and it's nice to be with people. When my partner goes to a coffee shop or something, he'll invite me oftentimes, and coffee shops are like very distracting environments for me, first of all. But second of all, I just don't know if I'm going to get a call I have to take and where am I going to go to have that call, or, having my screen available for people to see, even with a privacy filter on it. I do find that I feel cabined in a bit. So I'm thankful for the focusmate.com suggestion that Neva raised, because I find it certainly can be difficult in person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Just a couple more slides and we're gonna wrap up for the evening. Thank you for everyone's patience. Since I stepped away, I wanted to just kind of give a little bit more time back. And we're gonna wrap up in probably the next 3-4 minutes. But what I wanted to, again, give another exercise that you can use in order for planning, and the idea here is that you just practice. Practice being able to plan out, what are materials like when you're going to accomplish a task. It helps not only with, recognizing how long the task is going to be, your start time, your end time, that the time blindness that we've talked about, but also just being able to figure out like what's your plan before you approach a task. And the more you do this, the easier planning becomes. But also just being able to think of like, what's the environment that you should be in that's really conducive for you to accomplish the task. And what are the materials? Planning things ahead of time, knowing what materials you need will save time where you don't feel as though like you've wasted time. And then of course, if you start feeling that you've wasted time, you feel less productive, and it all goes back to your mindset and anxiety and being overwhelmed, right? So there's always these connections that kind of are threaded throughout. And then the last thing we talked about that I wanted to bring up is self-compassion. We addressed some of this already in our talk. Watch out for negative self-talk, and that's going to be the mindset. Being okay when things are that might carry over. If you look at your lists and you beat yourself up for not having finished everything or for having too many tasks, you might start to avoid the list, right? So, and I think that sometimes could be the trap that individuals could fall into, is that they're like, well, I had all of this stuff and I didn't get anything done. So then they're like, oh, well, I don't, that the to-do list wasn't effective. Right. And so sometimes it's just going back and really recognizing, well, the to-do list is effective, but maybe either your mindset could be what we need to kind of reflect on, or do we need to fine tune intentionally how you're using the to-do list and the tasks, right? And with that, excuse me, is our discussion and takeaways. All right, do we have, I'm here if people additional, if there's any comments or questions that people have. But I know, Kathy, I saw that your hand was up earlier and then we kind of moved on, and I see it back up. So go ahead.
Yeah, and it's about the same thing I was going to raise my hand on earlier. With task management, I have tried and failed many, many, many times. And I think it's because I become very overwhelmed and all consumed with the planning portion. And so if I'm trying to get an entire list together, I get so scattered trying to pull in all the right elements or making it look a certain way or color coding it, and then it defeats the purpose because it didn't launch me into productivity, actually derailed me entirely.
Mhm.
So what I've been trying recently is more along the lines of one of your last few slides, which is planning, but only for a specific task, one task at a time. And so before I start that task, I will plan out the steps I need or the emails I need to find for it. Just plan for that task. And then when I get it off my plate, I'll plan for the next one. It's not a great method for prioritizing, but at least I don't get completely derailed. I can have a plan for that task and feel productive for the task at hand.
And I think, Kathy, you bring up a good point is, you know, will it help with prioritizing? No, but it also helps you feel accomplished. So, you know, some of this is, you know, you're not going to have a solution that's going to address every single thing. If you can get that, great. You know, that, and that's maybe what we want to strive for, but also being able to acknowledge that, you know, if you're between a rock and hard space, being able to pick or being able to acknowledge that you're in this position where it's like, okay, well, you know, prioritizing may kind of fall at the wayside, but at the same time, I feel accomplished. And so if that helps reduce you feeling anxious and overwhelmed and reduces your procrastination, then I would say that that's success. And so, but becoming aware of that is really important too. So yeah, thank you, Kathy. Neva, I don't know if you're still raising your hand or if you wanted to make another comment.
No, sorry, that was an accident. I didn't unraise it.
No, not a problem. Good comments, questions. Anybody want to have the last takeaway or thought or reflection for next until next week? What will you try this week based on our conversation today or in any previous conversations? Nobody's going to do anything. Wow. Excuse me, Alicia.
I guess I'll just I just want to thank NISBA for doing this. This program has really provided me with so much good information that I believe is going to be truly life-changing. And so I really want to thank NISBA for doing this and for free. So I really appreciate you for that. So thank you. And thank you so much for providing us with this information. You're amazing. You're thoughtful and you're so kind and generous. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alicia, for the feedback. Yeah, thank you. I saw Damien, your hand was up for a second and then it went down, but I see Adam's hand up. If you want to
No,
chime in.
I was just applauding Alicia's remarks and applauding you and Stacy and everybody at NISBA.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. So, you know, what I want you to do is really just take away the things that you can maybe try out, get out of your comfort zone, reflect, and then be prepared for next week to tell me about, you know, what you've tried, what were some of your successes, some of your challenges, what did you learn about yourself, you know, about your job or whatever it could be. Because again, at the end of the day, this is about you reducing you're reducing the anxiety and feeling overwhelmed, because I know that that's how you all feel, and a lot of it goes back to that same theme of feeling overwhelmed and burdened and burnt out, and we don't want you to get to that point of being burnt out. So just checking in with, you know, your thought process, your mindset, and asking for help. And we'll talk about that in the next couple of, you know, the next workshop or the following one, of how, you know, advocating and asking for help, and it's okay. And how to those interpersonal relationships. When it comes to bosses and supervisors. I know that that's been a feedback comment that was given last week. So if I can try to incorporate those things, I will absolutely do so. You know, try some of these techniques out. Of course, they're not going to be, it's not a magic pill. And it does take practice. A lot of this stuff takes practice, and you have to be intentional when completing these tasks. So with that, if there's no other comments, I want to wish everyone a good evening. Be safe, be healthy, take care of yourself, because I'm struggling there this week. So we please take care of yourselves.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for your participation. We look forward to another great session next week. Have a terrific
Yes.
week.
Bye.
Bye.